to stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please read item A.
Agenda item A is the construction of the County House Trail Phase 2 project from the intersection of College Park Drive and Stadium Boulevard to Rollins Road.
Staff, please.
Thank you. This project was selected at the September 3rd, 2013 council meeting as a round 2 project of the Get About funding and was chosen over an alignment that went east of Russell School. The scope consists of constructing a trail from the north terminus of Phase 1 of the County House Trail at the intersection of Stadium Boulevard and College Park Drive, continuing west around the Southwest Swim Club to Oxford Drive. From there, the trail will continue north along city-owned right-of-way to Rollins Road. The proposed trail will be reinforced 6-inch thick concrete, 10 feet wide, and will be constructed mostly on city right-of-way. There is an existing path used for utility maintenance access that will be utilized where feasible. Approximately 8 permanent easements will be needed, and approximately 85 trees 6 inches and larger are expected to be removed. 2 IP meetings were held June 12th and August 26th of 2014. The cost of this project was originally estimated at $445,000. However, changes in the alignment as a result of the IP meetings increased the project estimate to $775,000. The changes include a longer trail, additional retaining walls, extending the box culvert under Stadium Boulevard, additional tree clearing, and 1 additional crossing of the County House branch. This section of the trail, as mentioned earlier, is one option of other alignments studied in 2007 connecting the Twin Lakes Park to Cosmo Park. The project will be funded with Get About grant funds, and construction is proposed in the summer of 2016. Be happy to answer any questions.
I have 3 questions. And the first question, I'm going to ask the city manager because this keeps popping up on my Facebook page. Why don't we use this money and hire firefighters?
This is a federal grant, and so we may not use it for any other purpose.
Second question is that hypothetically we may approve this project plus options 1 and 3. In the hypothetical situation in which we approve this project and Rollins 1 and 3, and we don't have enough money to complete all 3, how will that be managed?
Once we get through tonight, with all the projects that we're talking about here, I'm going to sit down with Parks Director Mike Griggs, and we're going to go through all the money that he has, that I have, and we bring back to council should we not have enough money for all these projects on how we see these need to be funded, or let you all prioritize them and tell us what needs to be funded.
So I'll just underscore the work of the council tonight is really to decide what the alignments will be and how much trail you want. We'll come back with a funding plan that you may or may not like, and you can change at that point. But the funding is not as much of a question tonight as the alignment and which trails do you want to do.
As somebody who's ridden a lot of trails in a lot of cities, I stand at the top of Rollins Street and look down that ravine, and I see a 20 or 30 foot drop off. I want to be convinced that this is doable without huge, massive switchbacks through 2 or 3 yards.
Well, we do have switchbacks on other trails. Project Greenbrier would be one of them. That's a pretty steep project. We also have one over on Old 63 that we came under a bridge and back up onto Old 63. So it's doable, and it can be done at a good rate. And so again, tonight we're talking about the alignment, and we'll come back to you with easements in a future date to show you that it can be done.
And if we will have an opportunity to be critical of the grades and the location of the switchbacks at that time, should we pass it tonight.
Yes.
And just to, again, underscore that, at that point you might choose to not do one to fund the others, or, there's, I think, 5 Get About projects that are still live, as I remember, or
about that.
Huh? That's right. So you have the opportunity to reprioritize which ones you wish to fund.
I just have one question, and that was, I've been meeting with folks pro and con, I'm sure the rest of the council has as well, and one of the questions that I promised those folks that I had talked to had to do with what happens on the north side of this. So, I mean, PedNet historically, and then Get About later on, has always had this spokes and wheel concept and connectivity and all the rest of it. That's what we've been striving for. What happens? What is envisioned for any connectivity on the north side of this? Should this occur?
There were options on the screen. The study in '07 provided different alignments. Ultimately, the goal was to connect Twin Lakes to Cosmo, and we do have one of our Get About project is a sidewalk on Manor, and we'll be bringing that forward. And so Manor is a connection that is up the hill and does cross over Broadway and continues north. So that new sidewalk is part of the system, if you will.
Any other questions from council?
Yes, I walked the trail with staff, and I wanted to follow up on the mayor's question about the steepness at Rollins. Had you looked at yet taking, I understand the pipe going under Rollins is needing to be, the stormwater pipe needs to be replaced, and that there's going to be maybe a box culvert. Have you looked at the possibility of enlarging that or raising that or deepening that so the trail could go through there? Because the trail's not going to be usable when there's high water anyways. So something like by Providence and the...
Well, we really didn't look
there.
at going through that box. We looked at if it does get extended, it might help us with the grade changes, having that further south and trying to get that elevation change quicker. If that project, if the stormwater funding is available for that project, that would be something we can incorporate together. But we really hadn't looked at going through that box at this point.
So that would be one possible solution that doesn't encroach on the two property owners.
And that's going to take some more study and more in-depth to look at that, but that's a possibility of when that grade moves further south, that may give us a chance to utilize some of that terrain and not make it such a steep incline as it is now. Because as that fill slope comes off the road, it allows for opportunity to maybe utilize that.
Just one additional question. It gets back to that culvert. Obviously, that it is deteriorating, and it's going to need some work. And you're proposing a box culvert, but those two sources of dollars are segregated, right? I mean, those are two separate projects that has nothing to do with.
Correct.
That's correct. That is.
Although this is just anticipated that because it's in the discussion.
It's something we need to look at as we proceed with it. What's most cost effective to do?
That's correct. And that pipe is going to need some attention sometime soon.
Any other questions?
Another question that was raised was whether you looked at a connection that went east and south of Russell School so that you'd cut the hill climb on College Park by half or two-thirds. Was that looked at?
I think that was looked back in the original study. Is that?
Yeah, somebody brought that up at the interested parties meeting, and it wasn't an alignment that we originally looked at in 2007. So it was just an additional one that anything's feasible, but we didn't particularly look at that alignment.
I think at that time we were given direction that we needed to study this particular one at the council meeting. So that's.
You needed to study. What was that? I couldn't.
The one that we are working on today was the direction we were given, that we were not directed to put time to study the one going east around the school.
At the other end of the trail down at College Park and Stadium, will it be a pedestrian-activated crosswalk going across College Park there to get from where the trail comes out from under the box culvert under the stadium across to the west side?
Yes.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions? I'll open the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak?
Hi there, Annette Triplett, Executive Director of PedNet Coalition. I lost my voice over the weekend, so sorry I sound kind of froggy. 201 West Broadway. I would like to voice the support of PedNet Coalition and our members for the proposed Phase 2 project of the County House Trail. The existing County House Trail connects many neighborhoods that are north of the MKT, extending all the way to Stadium to the MKT Trail. Because the MKT is a backbone of our trail system, from it you can travel to many of our community's major destinations. Phase 2 of County House will further extend this opportunity for non-motorized transportation to the neighborhoods north of Stadium. County House Phase 2 is an important step towards the goal of expanding our trail system to serve more of our community, with the ultimate goal of encouraging mode shift to non-motorized travel. There have been some concerns about the grade of the hill as it intersects at Rollins Road. Since we live in a hilly city, the best practice for building trails is to have them follow the creeks where the land is flattest so that the majority of the route is easy to travel. There will always be a climb out of the valley, but the route will be most usable, appealing, and convenient for transportation when it follows level land near the creek. The County House Trail has been in city trail plans since 2002 and was approved by council in 2013 as one of the remaining priority projects for Get About funding. The community has shown support for the trail for many years, and now the plans are ready and the funding is available. We ask you to approve this trail tonight and complete this long-awaited project. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor McDavid and council members, thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening. I thank each one of you that spent your personal time to visit with my wife or myself, or both of us together, to discuss this project. That's pretty neat. My name is Glenn Chambers. My wife Jeannie and I live at 807 Cornell Street. That's the area that will be impacted by this proposed project. We own our own home. We have worked hard to pay for it. We are not willing sellers. Thanks for the opportunity. As a farm boy, I grew out there. I know what this is all about. And I moved to Columbia in 1958 to complete my master's degree at the University of Missouri in Wildlife Management. I was employed by the Missouri Department of Conservation in 1960. I have had a multifaceted career, 25 years with the Missouri Department of Conservation, 10 years with Ducks Unlimited, 5 years with National Geographic Television. I'm a professional wildlife cinematographer and wildlife photographer. We have owned property in 3 different locations in Columbia. We moved to the present location in 1990. The reason we moved is because we were encroached upon by other subdivisions and houses, and we selected a cul-de-sac where we thought it would be quieter and more pristine, and that we could have less environmental impacts. We have a good scenic view from our deck behind our house. I am an advocate for wildlife habitat. They are God-given gifts, and we are charged to be good stewards on their behalf. If my recollection is right, it was President Teddy Roosevelt who admonished conservationists to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. When we first moved to the Cornell address, we enjoyed whippoorwills.
30 seconds, Mr. Chambers. 30 seconds.
Okay. Whippoorwills, Louisiana water thrushes, great horned owls. But when the city put the easement up through there, the old growth disappeared, and those critters disappeared. I'm going to let my wife speak now to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers.
My name is Janelle Patterson, 1917 Vassar. I went to the meetings, and it's such a floodway now. Taking out the trees and making concrete down there is going to make it flood even more. That, at the time we had the meetings, we were told the money could not be used for sidewalks because replacing the sidewalks on College Park would be wonderful. They're in horrible condition. but now they're saying that they can do that on Manor, so I'm not understanding that. I guess also, how many of the neighbors that this land is affecting want this there? I don't think very many. So, once again, it's, let's move forward with this without really what some of the neighbors want and looking at other options. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, just in between speakers, please come up. Go ahead. I just need to, the fire chief would be unhappy with me if I didn't point out that we're violating the fire code. It's wonderful that everyone is here, but we do have an overflow room just outside the doors to the left, conference room 1A, 1B. You can see and hear everything. So everyone that's lined up in front of the doors, I need to ask you to please go ahead back into the overflow room and watch from there. When you want to invite you all to come in and speak if you like, but can't block the doors. Thank you.
Sarah Lowe, 1900 Vassar. I fully support the bike trail system and the development of it. However, I do have some concerns regarding the degree of study that has gone into this proposal. After taking steps to restrict the amount of impervious paving in a new development to reduce the impact of runoff in an adjacent natural area, I do think it appears a bit hypocritical to support the installation of impervious paving in a natural watershed in an existing neighborhood without a comment on the environmental or ecological impact or a study of or proposal of alternative methods or means such as pervious concrete. The current and continued use of the right-of-way will be a utility access road in conjunction with the trail. As such, construction of the pavement will need to meet minimum standards for utility roads. The proposal does note a 6-inch minimum concrete, but this will also necessitate adequate gravel base, since the use of trucks in there will be when the ground is fully saturated. That's when the trees go down. And a turnaround, which is there existing. While the need for the route to act as a utility road is noted in some public work memos that we have gotten, there seems to be a tendency to describe the project only as a trail. I would like to confirm that use and construction of the route as a utility road will not jeopardize the use of, quote, non-motorized transportation pilot program funds, and that we find ourselves having to fund this project with other means later. I would simply ask that before this proposal is approved, adequate studies have been performed and alternates have been considered. Thank you.
Evening. Steve Winmiller, 705 East Rock Creek. To talk a little bit about the infrastructure currently in the College Park area, there is a traffic calming initiative going on because the vehicles travel at a high rate of speed down College Park, which quite frankly makes it unsafe, especially to travel down for people, kids on bikes. Again, we talked about this as a connector for various areas. The sidewalk is only on one side of College Park, which, as other people have stated, it's in pretty bad shape. It's not safe really to travel down there. And obviously it's difficult for a lot of people to ride up or walk up College Park. So this would be a flat connector that would be very helpful. The second thing I want to talk about is, as previously mentioned, the box culvert, the current metal culvert that goes under Rollins. 705 Rock Creek, my house, is the second one to the north. In 2010, that culvert collapsed from the inside up, became blocked, and basically flooded my basement with 3 feet of water. I've since had many discussions with City Council and the Public Works about replacing that. And from all the discussions I've had, the current route of the trail seems to me it will actually help with the flooding problem in conjunction with the installation of the box culvert that goes under Rollins. So I urge you to support the County House 2 Trail Branch for those and many other reasons. Thank you.
Tate Winmiller, 705 East Rock Creek. I'll keep this brief because I think there's a lot of people that want to speak tonight. I've lived in that area essentially for my entire life, and I've walked back in that creek, and it's a beautiful area, and I think it's a great opportunity to build a trail back there because it will give the young children that area a place to walk and families to enjoy that area. And it's almost sad to think that they may not be able to do that. And I've heard that the box culvert has been an issue that's spoken tonight, and as the man in front of me just spoke, I live in the same house, and 2010 the house did flood, and it was just devastating. We lost so much. My father's home office was essentially destroyed, and we didn't have any sort of flood insurance, so all that kind of came out of our pockets, and that kind of set us back a little bit, and just, I think maybe getting that fixed up would be great. And I know that other neighbors in that area have had issues with flooding and things like that.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gregory Hefner. I'm a longtime resident of Columbia, Missouri. I've owned businesses here most of my life, and I've lived at 1914 Dartmouth for the last 35 years. I built the property because of the privacy, the fact that it backed up to a public easement and a floodplain. I have 30 feet across the front of my property out to the cul-de-sac. I have 250 feet along the backside of my property that will be affected by this. I've lived there a good portion of my life. I've watched the rain. I've watched the torrents flow through there. There is a water problem in that particular runoff. I've also watched the kids at Russell Boulevard School trying to go up and down the hills on those sidewalks with very little even lighting in the evening. There's already a bike path there. There is a path there for people to follow, but unfortunately the city's not maintained it in a decent manner. Now to come into our properties and take our property away from us to run a road for public use through our property seems capricious and a taking that makes no sense whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jeannie Chambers, the other half of Glenn, who's adamantly told you how he feels about things. I just want to say that I also have a concern about the habitat destruction and loss, and I know that developing walking trails and bike trails are very important, and we both, Glenn and I, do support that. Exercise, get the kids out in the wild, let them see what's going on. We're really concerned that this will not necessarily meet the need of the children. And one of the things that hasn't been brought forth is we are one of two houses or lots that will be affected. We will have approximately 22 to 23% of our lot taken away from us. And Glenn has already said we are not willing sellers. The connectivity, I still have great concerns about that. I know you talked about Manor Drive. That is a few blocks away from where this proposed trail is. It looks to me like this is a trail to nowhere. It just ends there on Rollins. I don't believe there's any way you can go across it up Rock Creek, just structurally. And I'm sorry, I'm not conceptualizing how that connectivity goes. I want to iterate something that was said earlier, and that is to please consider all the options and research all avenues before a decision is made. Thank you.
Mayor McDavid, members of the City Council, my name is Scott Lincoln. I am an avid trail user, and I am a property owner whose property will be taken to complete the County House Trail extension. I support this action. I cannot imagine an argument either for or against this extension or our trail system which has not been made to yourselves or your predecessors many, many times over. And while I have a particular discomfort with any argument from an individual or a thinly veiled association which begins with I or we value the trail system, but I have decided not to use my time here going there. I believe this extension on our trails are not about my backyard, which it was not prior to 1998, and one day most certainly will not be again. I believe this extension and our trails are part of a larger picture of 1,000 smiles, waves, and nods which feed the souls of those who nurture our institutions, our businesses, our churches, our arts, and our recreation. And that is all of us. I believe the larger picture is stopping to enjoy a red-tailed hawk nesting in a sycamore and walking away no longer a stranger to the lady of that shared moment, as I did this past week. And I believe the larger picture is my friends who moved to Columbia 10 years ago and remained after a nationwide search of communities with trails, or my friends now retiring to Columbia from Tucson purchasing a lot on the Russell property to be near the Scotts Branch Trail. I believe the larger picture is the couple from New York City. My wife and I met at a trailhead this past fall with a map of the city trails in hand and now asking us, we are looking at 2 residences. We will be here a year, maybe longer. Where would you recommend we live to give us the best access to your trails? Not unlike I, 37 years ago from Upper New York State, and yet to discover what an amazing town this is. A town of higher learning and first-rate public schools, the Arc and True False and MU football and We Always Swing, of the Missouri Theater and Stevens Lake, of Cosmos Park and Roots of the Blues and the District. Destinations all, and the trails no less, woven into those destinations. And this couple saying to themselves, perhaps, oh yeah, this town is special. This is where we want to settle, to create new friends, raise our family, and pay our taxes. Mayor McDavid and members of the City Council, this extension is but a small but no less important part of a miles-wide footprint. It is a footprint which says welcome and hello again. I respectfully ask that my property be included in this larger picture and that you vote yes to the extension of the County House Trail. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Wendy Lister. I live at 1906 Princeton Drive, and my house backs up to the trail, the alley that will make the trail, and I just want to ask for your support. I think it's a great trail project.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dan Harder. I live at 1803 Bluff Point Drive. I live on the east side of town, but I did grow up on about a block or 2 away from Southwest Swim Club. Probably 25 years ago, we attended Southwest every single day during the summer, and I know that quite a few people either walked or rode their bicycles to Southwest Swim Club, and I know that they would definitely take advantage of a trail like this. We did explore that area when we were kids, and I always thought it was such a vast, open area that kind of wasn't used, and I think it would be a great improvement to the city to consider this trail. Thank you.
Hi, Michelle Woodmiller, 705 Rock Creek. We live 2 houses north of the Rollins, where the Rollins would exit. And I know you've heard all the arguments, and I know you've seen the area, but I'm going to talk about the neighbors that live up in my neighborhood, which is Rock Creek, Longfellow, Rockingham, Briarwood, Briarwood East, Cornell, Harvard, and Colgate. All of us around there. Yes, we have access to County House 1 now, but we have a giant hill that makes it really hard for families to get to County House 1. This one connector will open up County House 1, thus the MKT, the Katy, everything, the city, to families who will be able to come down into Rollins, drop onto that trail, and then just take off through the city. I think that's a very important thing for all of the kids. Tons of kids live in this area. Thank you.
Hi, Lawrence Simonson, 2706 Hillshire Drive, and I'm in favor of the County House Branch Trail. I use Phase 1 quite frequently. When I use it with my son, and I think about how that trail, Phase 1, has changed the environment, the community that it goes through. I see more people out enjoying themselves. I see people commuting by bicycle and walking between their neighbors' houses, and I can only imagine the great benefit that this would have as it goes through that neighborhood as well. Research, history has always told us when we put one of these trails in, the neighborhood benefits and the neighborhood loves it. Yes, there are always people that are a little bit fearful of change, but we know that this change will be positive in the end. I know the mayor mentioned a little bit about not wanting to go up switchbacks. I don't think anybody here loves going up switchbacks. But unfortunately, we do have to go up switchbacks time to time. But I would say that think about the alternative. You can go up that switchback that's in a beautiful wooded area, or go up College Park, which is along a very busy, speeding road. And a lot of people speak to how they don't like going up the hill. What I would argue to think about is trying to control your family with children, a 4-year-old, trying to go down that hill. And I would much rather coach my son down a switchback through a wooded area with no motor vehicle traffic, then coach him down a very high-speed, straight, wide, almost kind of highway-feeling road. So I urge you to vote in favor of County House Branch Phase 2. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Dee Dee Sternad. I live at 803 Cornell, right on the corner of Rollins and Cornell. This trail is like the bridge to nowhere that Sarah Palin liked in Alaska. I mean, it ends right there at Rollins. If it was going to connect with Manor's way someplace else, I don't know. Trails, I mean, bike routes were painted in on College Park. It is steep. If people speed, I know that they have police guarding that and ticketing people. I've seen it a lot because I walk up to Russell School all the time. So that is what we need to do to make sure that people follow the speed limit there. It's just a few feet away from where this is coming out on Rollins to nowhere. It doesn't connect to any place. And so right now, I don't see that it's a good option. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joe Silsby, 1105 South Glenwood Avenue. I'm an independent contractor with the city Get About program. I lead rides through the leisure times. They're advertised there. Oftentimes we have people on those rides who say, oh, I didn't know this shortcut was here, or oh, this trail is wonderful. I can get from A to B and go to the dentist or go to the grocery store or see Sally that I have to walk all the way around to normally get to her house. So I see a lot of positive benefits to the trails that we already have. And people didn't realize, I don't think, the benefit until they're there. Generally at these meetings, I hear the NIMBYs and the rest of the people. The rest of the people are the ones who are really benefiting from the trails and see a need for them. And I'm thankful for the city council that always votes or generally always votes in favor of those for the greater good of the city and not just for a few homeowners that don't like it. One gentleman said he'd moved twice to where he is now. I guess he could move another time if he didn't like where he was. But that was bad, wasn't it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Corwin Miller. I live at 705 East Straw Creek, and I support this trail because I think it's important for families with kids to have a safe way to get around the city.
Thank you.
My name is Barbara Wren, and I live at 615 Bluffdale Drive, and I'm a federal taxpayer, and I also pay for FEMA flood insurance. I've paid FEMA flood insurance for 20 years. According to Trans Systems engineers, the city's flood models are not up to date, and I don't think any more construction should be done in floodplains until those flood models are brought up to date, because if a mistake is made in engineering, it puts homes like mine in danger. I have seen in the last 10 years that there has been increased flooding, that the flood levels have raised higher than they ever have. And if a house has been somewhere for 50 years and there's not been flooding, and all of a sudden there's a threat of flooding, it means some engineer somewhere has made a mistake. There are also executive orders that are tied to federal highway transportation funds. There's an executive order 13274 that George Bush wrote in September 18th of 2002 for environmental stewardship and transportation infrastructure project reviews, that these projects should not harm the environment. Jimmy Carter passed an executive order 11988 for floodplain management, and there are advice on highway project funds and floodplain management. Also, Jimmy Carter wrote an executive order 11990 on May 24th, 1977, and this was for protection of wetlands. and I don't feel like there has been adequate review of the provisions of the grant for the Get About money and how they compare with these federal rules. Also, the Federal Highway Department, from what I have read, frowns on eminent domain unless it is for something very, very necessary, like a major highway going through. And I don't think that these benefit enough people to go in and demand eminent domain of people's properties. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen Kopp, 1001 Rollingwood Drive, and would like to speak in favor of the trails. I'm someone who benefits greatly from the Greenbrier connector that was recently built. I commute to work on campus every day, 5 days a week, and I used to have to go down Forum, which was horrible, if you've ever seen Forum, and the side of Forum, which is never cleaned. I got flat tires all the time, which made commuting really difficult. The Greenbrier connector is wonderful. When I first saw it, I was also interested in the switchbacks. Someone said no one likes switchbacks. I actually love the switchbacks. They're really fun to ride. And I was surprised to see how many people ride those. My partner and I, who also commutes every day to campus, were surprised at the people who are wearing business clothes on nice days and commuting up and down the Greenbrier connector, the campus running teams that run up and down the connector. But what I really love about it is that I can get to work without taking any highly trafficked roads, and also that I can see my neighbors. There are so many people that I greet every morning on my way to work up and down the Greenbrier. Hoping to extend this opportunity to other people to be able to commute like I do. I support the trail. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Hello. My name is Darwin Heineman. I live at 1223 Francis Drive. And you've heard excellent arguments in connection with this. And I would like to add just a little bit. And that is that we have a wonderful trail system, and one of the goals is to interconnect it to neighborhoods as much as possible. And that was one of the accomplishments of Phase 1 of the County House branch. This would extend those benefits up to a significant number of new neighborhoods. The city owns a street right-of-way that would take up nearly the entire route of this project. This should be used for the highest and best use for the community, and I believe extending this wonderful trail system to these neighborhoods is truly the highest and best use. It will be a great benefit to the community as a whole, and has been pointed out, very likely would be to the neighborhoods. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
I was here for this other trail, and I
Can
was...
you give your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Derek Leonhard. I live at East Parkway, and I was upset at the last trail that I was at, and because it was on Edgewood and it didn't run down my street. So I wish it would have gone down East Parkway, you know. So I'm a firm believer in trails. I think cities are cities. Wildlife habitat is wildlife habitat. I think the policies of our city are wonderful. Compact development, efficient trail systems, efficient roadways, deal with the problems at hand when it's necessary. When something floods, you mitigate it. So if you want a wildlife sanctuary or whatever, you find those perfect places which are not in the compact city. Keep our compact city going, keep it efficient. In 20 years, everyone will be happy that they have the trails in their backyard. You know, that's the bottom line. It's just too bad that I didn't get mine.
Council, I'm Judy Lincoln. I'm at 811 Cornell. I'm right next to Glenn and Jeannie and Dee Dee. I've worked for 10 years with Raptor Rehab. I don't speak for them, but I've seen many birds hit because they have been moved out of their natural environment and have to hunt off the side of the roads and get hit by cars. That's not pleasant. I had this all in my mind. I'm already messed it up. I used to live over on Texas. The Texas dip has nothing on the Rollins dip. It's much like this, so if people are worried about their kids going down College Park, Rollins is much steeper. And no matter where you are from the bottom of that hill, you have to go uphill with little kids. So if that's what your goal is, I think you better think about it. I thank you for your time and effort. I hope you think about water mitigation and I guess traffic calming, which would not make me happy because I like to go fast sometimes. Sorry. I love the trail. I love walking on the gravel trail. If I want to walk on concrete, I will walk on the street. Thank you guys very much.
My name is Paul Love, and I live at 100 Sandra Avenue. I'd like to say that if we extend the transit system, the trails to the north, I could be a beneficiary. I ride our trails quite frequently. That's my weekend entertainment. But I'm reminded they came for the socialists, and I did not speak because I was not a socialist. They came for the trade unions, and I did not speak because I was not a unionist. They came for the Jews, and I did not speak, for I was not a Jew. They came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Taking property for public use is something that should be done only with a great deal of thought. Does this fill a need that can be met in no other way? This property belongs to people, and this is the crowning achievement of their life. They've worked all their lives for this property. And I'm not going to say there won't be people who won't enjoy this trail. I'm not going to say that a lot of people won't benefit. The question is, before you take property from someone else, is there no other way you can do this? Because it could be happening to you. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is John Riddick. I live at 602 Rollins Court. I'd like to say a little bit in support of this trail. People have brought up that it's a trail to nowhere, it's a dead end, but in fact, just this evening drove on Rock Creek, and if you cross Rollins, it's a mostly fairly gentle slope to get up to Broadway. And once you get to Broadway to cross that. So I think you can avoid the Rollins Hills and the College Park Hills by using this connector. Thank you.
Ellen Thomas, 2616 Hillshire Drive. I live on the MKT Trail. It's in my backyard, and my family and I use it daily. I've heard a lot of concerns about the impacts on wildlife, and I would like to say that our backyard is just full of wildlife with the trail right there. I am a very inexpert birder, and I almost never have binoculars with me, and yet I've seen more than 60 species of birds, including just 2 weeks ago, a bald eagle right by Twin Lakes. I've also seen, of course, many mammals and amphibians and reptiles. In general, I believe people will protect what they know. In our case, we are the beneficiaries because once the MKT trail was put in place, the forum wetlands were built because of public support for preserving the corridor of the trail. I've been commuting on the MKT for over a decade, and each time a new connection is made, I see an increase in the number of families, adults and children, who are able to access it. And this will be another one. As a pediatrician, I now see literally dozens of children on medications to treat the complications of sedentary lifestyles. I think the more that we can give our children easy, safe ways to be active, the better off we are as a community. So I hope you'll support this addition to the wonderful trail system. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm Mihal Popescu. I live on 715 Bluffdale. And I have to reiterate what former speaker said. I lived in communities for 30 years, and I thought I'm coming in the country of all opportunities. And I cannot believe that I hear so much disrespect for private property. So I heard only one speaker mentioning it. I came here to fulfill my American dream. I bought a property in 705 Bluffdale for the nice view. That was exactly, my wife is here. I got in the house, I saw the backyard, and I said, we buy it. Okay? So you have to consider people that invested all their life and hope in a house. And you can say, move away. We don't care. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? I'm going to close the public hearing. Council discussion, I'll start.
Could I ask a question?
Yes. You off staff?
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
go ahead.
There's been a comment on the concerns about the water in the valley with additional pavement, and I know there were concerns and problems with the Moon Valley route, and there's still some standing water there. Can you talk, but I know there were changes after that in other trails. Can you talk a little bit about what you do to examine the hydrology effects and what can be done to mitigate that so that you're leaving that area absorbing the water similar to what it was before the trail?
Well, we have to follow the National Environmental Policy Act, which we refer to as NEPA. The federal government requires it on all these projects. Therefore, you have to do studies. MoDOT signs off on these, as well as federal highways. And so we try to, as we design these projects, to make sure we have to meet all these requirements by these national policies. As far as runoff in those areas, when you start talking about a stream like the Hinkson, you're going to have some wetlands that develop. You're going to have some ponding. That's part of the stream in itself. I don't know about this particular stream. I don't know. It's not like the Hinkson. It's probably a little steeper grade than that. And so we're not going to have probably the ponding that you would see on the Hinkson Creek because of that nature. But, you know, we will have some areas that may need to be filled after we're done. If we have some areas that people are concerned about mosquitoes, we come back and fill those when we reseed it, and we try to make sure that there's no standing water that is impacting the neighbors.
John, I think there was a change in your practices after the Moon Valley Trail and before the Katy connector behind the movie theater at Forum, because I was very impressed with the process that you ran there with a couple of walks with council members, and I think the public were invited to really look at the detailed alignment, to show how you were selecting the route to avoid all of the old growth trees, as well as preserve the dead trees that are bat habitat, and to design the switchbacks to have the least environmental impact.
Yeah, one of the things that we run into, as you saw Dave allude to, some of this was planned back in 2007, which was 8 years ago. And so we lose track of exactly what people remember and those things. And so we started after the Moon Valley Trail staking it so everybody had a chance to walk it publicly. The staff walked with you, showed you what trees we were taking out. And that's what we try to do on all these trail projects now, to make sure everybody's up to speed when they do it, because council does change, and you know, even though we've gone through the process, people have moved in and out.
And that trail, the Forum Katy Connector, is a beautiful trail with trees very close to the trail that clearly has not had a dramatic impact.
And that's one of the things here. We have a right-of-way that we're trying to stay in and not impact our private property. It's just sometimes you can't help it.
Mm-hmm.
Questions?
Yeah, I just had a question. Actually, I was here in 2007 when that discussion was occurring. It has changed. There's no doubt about it. And with respect to some of those changes, I wanted to ask, there have been several people that came forward, landowners, property owners, who are in favor of this and who are going to be impacted, and there were several folks that spoke against it because they too were going to be impacted. And I understand, I went on the tour, and the staff explained to me as well what some of the possibilities were, and there were changes because some people's property that was impacted was changed because of the route of the trail and so on and so forth. I guess what I'm asking for is a sense of whether this is a dozen people that are impacted, and do you have a sense of how many of these folks are willing to accommodate or are in favor of this, as opposed to how many folks are really opposing this on the grounds of how this might impact their private property?
There's 8 easements needed. I don't know if
8 easements needed.
Yeah.
And some of them are controversial, and some of them aren't. I take it some people.
Some of them will be permanent easements. Some of them would be temporary easements. As we construct it. I mean, it's hard to say. We don't have the detailed design quite yet, and so as we come forward, that's something that will be coming back to council.
But the bulk of
the easements.
The bulk of this is a utility easement,
yes,
too. And then there are some others in addition to that. Yes. I take it. Okay.
So,
Mr. Scala kind of asked one of my questions I just wrote down about the amount of right-of-way that we already have, so I can extrapolate that from the limited number of easements, we already own the vast majority of the right-of-way for this trail, yes, excluding, obviously, those few properties that have to have the temporary or permanent easements. So that answered one of my questions. And then another individual came and spoke about the road itself, because it's going to be paved, correct?
Trail, yes.
And so, as this is following our sewer line, and if there is ever an event that we have to have heavy equipment come back in there, this is nothing different than what's already throughout our community with the paved trails and on the utility easements.
Right.
Is there a problem or explain to me and the audience what they would expect if they had to bring heavy equipment in there? Would that road or that trail hold that weight of that equipment?
Sure, 6 inches of concrete to hold pretty much.
Okay.
And as long as it's not being used as a road,
right,
it'll hold up most anything. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All our residential streets are 6-inch non-reinforced streets in the city.
Okay. So this is the same standard most of our older streets are.
I would expect the sewer department to come in and look and make sure there's nothing that they need to do before we put the trail in. I mean,
Those are the questions that I had.
Anybody else have any questions? So I'm going to start with my discussion. I'm a big fan of the trails. I'm going to approve this resolution. I'm going to vote to approve this resolution. I think that we have to understand where this fits into the big picture of things, because we're nearing the $28 million, the end of that non-motorized transportation grant. And we may, with our plans, we may be over that. I don't know. And so an approval tonight does not mean this trail will be built, frankly. If the money is not there, this will have to get into a priority list, and we'll have to, it'll be the council who decides which trails make the cut and which don't. And I say that mindful of the fact that we have a 1/4-cent park sales tax continuation coming up. I'm not sure whether it's going to be August or November, but those of us that are parks and trails fans, we're going to have to get together like we did 5 years ago and get that continuation passed. And I also say this, it is, for me, contingent on the design. If I'm Mrs. Sternad and I look at that drop-off, I would be really worried about how much concrete you're going to take out of my backyard over a series of switchbacks. So I think it is absolutely incumbent of us that intrusion be as minimal as possible. And we all weight that design. So again, this is my vote. Our vote is a contingent vote. It's contingent on the sequence of possibilities I mentioned.
Well, I'm going to go next. This project's in the 4th Ward. And I want to start by acknowledging people who choose where they want to live based on the environment and their desire for some quiet and some privacy. Understand that is something that we should value as a community, is people's desire to make their choices and establish their homes in a particular setting. But as a city council, we really have to look a bigger picture than individual homeowners. The individual homeowners are part of that picture, but we have to look at the whole. I have to look at the whole 4th Ward, and really we each have to look at the whole city. We're not just legislating our own wards. So with that frame, then this connection is part of an entire system of trails, as several speakers have mentioned, and it makes connections that allows more and more people to enjoy the trails, and people really do enjoy the trails. There are hundreds of homes that are north of Rollins, that are even west of this trail and on the other side of Stadium, that will be within a quarter mile of this trailhead and be able to use this trailhead to access a beautiful trail through the woods, which I am certain will be designed beautifully, just as the Forum-Katy connector. And if people haven't seen that trail, you should take a walk just behind the Forum movie theater. It's absolutely gorgeous. It goes about a quarter mile down to the MKT trail. It's attractive through the trees. It has not damaged that environment, and it allows workers in that business and employment district and residents in that area to very easily and safely access the trail. This trail will eliminate the need to ride a bike or walk on College Park, which is very steep. The point where College Park meets Rollins is much higher than where this trail comes out. So for a lot of people, they will have to ride all the way up to a much higher point right now to then descend again to get to the point where the trail starts. By building in the creek corridor, we have the least amount of gradient that we can possibly have. And there are plenty of neighbors that we've heard from that live right in that area who really want this trail, including some whose property will be impacted by the current design that we have on the books. There is overwhelming evidence that people who live near trails really love their trails. And sometimes people have concerns before the trail is built, and very often then come to love them after they're built. A lot of the concerns that people have turn out not to be the case. We heard from testimony about how people are moving to Columbia because we are gaining a reputation as a city of trails. It's one of the things that sets us apart from many, many other cities. And that's a great thing. And as we continue to build the system and to give access to the trail system to more and more people, that benefit will only continue to grow. The staff have made a number of changes to the original alignment for this trail in response to neighbors' concerns. Some of the residents in those neighborhoods and also the Southwest Swim Club. And the Southwest Swim Club is perfectly comfortable with the current proposal. And as people have mentioned, they will be a beneficiary in terms of people being able to access, and especially young people, the swim club by the trail, and that will reduce the pressure on their parking area. But I would ask, in supporting and approving this trail, would ask that you look at alignments, look at the possibility of putting the trail under Rollins Road if that culvert is going to be rebuilt. It will greatly reduce the amount of height that has to be gained on the south side and allow the trail to maybe connect to the north side of Rollins, if that was possible, and any other alternatives to minimize the impact on the property owners who would lose property on the current plan. I do want to respond to the concerns about impervious pavement. I really don't think that a thin 10 feet wide strip makes any big picture impact to stormwater runoff. Just as long as there is a gentle sideways slope to that trail, then the rainwater that falls on the trail is going to run straight to the side and soak right in there. As long as we don't build it like a storm drain, then it's really not going to have any major impact at all. There is a lot of water runs down that corridor, and one of the reasons is that we've built so much impervious surface upstream, parking lots and big wide roads. As we build out our trail system and we encourage more non-motorized transportation, we reduce those kind of impacts, which are the impacts that really cause stormwater problems. I also firmly believe that there will be very little, if any, negative impact on animal life in that area. I see birds and mammals and other animals close to trails all the time, as another speaker mentioned, if we open up these natural areas for more people, in particular children, to come in and experience the beauty and wonder and see the wildlife, then that generation will grow up loving those things more and will seek to preserve them. So in the long run, we are really doing a benefit to preserving our natural resources. So I will be voting to ask you to go ahead with detailed design for this trail.
Oh, great, thank you. You know, I've evolved on this over the years. I think, I mean, I started out with many years on the Environment and Energy Commission. Certainly, we've had those fights, Ian, those fights about impervious pavement on some of the trails many years ago. I won't characterize it as losing that fight, but we now have a trail system by which we have 6-inch cement, and we've gained a lot of ground. Excuse the pun. In terms of how we treat the natural environment. That is, I can remember before issues like Moon Valley, when we put in a high water bridge in that particular area and had to clear out a lot of the timber and so on. There were even some questions about owl habitat and some of the dead trees and so on. Now we are protecting some of the dead trees. We're actually putting guidelines in and making sure that some of that habitat is preserved. And generally speaking, I've evolved into becoming a believer that the trail system is a good thing generally. There are issues, however. One of those issues is obviously boiling to the forefront tonight, and that has to do with the city's responsibility in terms of what its easements connote and what private property is all about. In this particular instance, with this County House Trail Phase 2 project, I think that the staff has done a lot of work with respect to taking advantage of the city's easements and minimizing the amount of impact that the city has with respect to some of the private property issues. And a lot of these things have been said. Ian, you mentioned some of them, and some of the other folks have as well. Generally speaking, ultimately property values tend to increase. There is an aesthetic component to this, not the loss of habitat, actually gaining the ability of people to appreciate the habitat that there is, because these are areas that typically people would not get a chance to see. And usually the fears that are recognized with trails about suspicious folks being back there and all the rest of it are mitigated by the fact that the more people you get out there, the better it is for our public safety, actually. That's the best thing that we can do for public safety, is to get our community out walking around on the trails and in the neighborhoods. So in this particular, I'll have more to say about this with respect to the other trail issue, and I'm also very interested in this idea that the mayor raised about priorities, the amount of money that we have, because I'm very mindful of what these budgetary considerations are. Even though these are segregated funds and they come from the Get About stuff, there is a limit. I can remember in, I think it was 2007 or 8, we were up against $13 million. We were going to spend $13 million on the rest of these trails, because that's what was left out of the $20 million after we advertised how to get people out of their cars and onto bicycles and so on. I thought that was a bit much to spend on advertising, but nonetheless, that's what we had left, and that's how we decided to start approaching some of these trails projects. So I'll be real interested in terms of what this means for the prioritization of the monies and those trails that we have left beyond, and including this County House Trail Phase 2, and with the other one that we're going to consider tonight, the Shepherd to Rollins connector as well. I'll bring some of those questions up at the time. But at this point, I'm prepared to support this trail project in terms of the plans and specifications moving forward.
Well, I'll add a few comments here. I was on the City Council when we received the non-motorized transportation grant from the federal government, and we aptly branded that as Get About Columbia, and Get About projects. And so in listening to the conversations and comments this evening, I hear a lot of people deviating from the purpose of this trail, which it's being funded by the Get About funds, which is a transportation project. This is not really for recreation. This is to change the mode of which people get from point A to point B. Recreation is a component of that, but the primary focus of these funds and the extension of many of these trails is to get people to use alternative transportation to get from their homes, whether it's to their business, to their school, to the park down the street, and get out of their cars. Automobiles cause far more environmental damage because of the amount of concrete, the amount of trees and excavation that has to be done. And if we drive on any of our roads, and especially in some of our periphery roads, there is certainly a horrible detriment to our wildlife. I don't think there is a day that goes by that I unfortunately do not see something lying dead on the side of our road. On any times I've ever been on the trails, I don't see dead animals from being hit by bicycles or pedestrians. And so maybe on an occasion, maybe a frog. But all kidding aside, to me, and I take property rights very seriously, and so I know staff has been excellent in working with people for years on these trail projects to have it the least invasive to their space and what they've grown accustomed to. But we took those federal transportation dollars years ago with the idea we were going to put in infrastructure for alternative transportation, and this certainly fits the objective of what we took those funds for, and so I will support this. And over the years, we've had many of these trail projects come before us, and Greenbrier Trail, I heard person come up to the podium and speak about the Greenbrier Trail. There was opposition to the Greenbrier Trail, and I heard a lot of the same arguments, destruction of, the habitat, paved roads where we should have, the gravel trails, lowering property values, traffic, more people coming into their neighborhood, potential for crime. After that trail was built, we had the grand opening. If I recall, I think the governor was even there at that event. And I was able to walk through that trail and see the finished product. And so many people came up to me and said, I was opposed to this, but I love it now. And so I can understand all of the concerns that have been mentioned. They're always mentioned, but again, I think history will show us, and we even had a study not too long ago that shows that this really, it doesn't impact negatively on property values, and that it increases, people's awareness in their neighborhoods of their neighbors, and there's so many more benefits. So again, the focus of this is changing transportation shift, modal shift, and because of that, I will support this because it fulfills that obligation we made when we took those federal funds.
I've had quite a few people contact me who live in the area and who don't live in the area. And the people who live close to but outside the area are generally very supportive of it in terms of using it to avoid going up and down the steep College Park hill and also being in a natural area. The people who live there are, from my reading, are also pretty supportive, with the exception of some of the properties that are most intensely affected. So what I would strongly encourage is that staff try to look at ways, as we suggested with going under Rollins and the culvert, to least affect the property owners and the property rights that are most impacted by this. The other thing is, I think when we're impacting property owners negatively, or they certainly feel negatively, and we're taking away their property, especially property in this case that is very close to their home, that we need to look at spending a little bit more money on the trail for those segments to make a better trail, not only for the general public, but for those people too. So looking again at the box culvert or a raised, straighter area, as we did with the Audubon Society. And also, I don't know how we determine the appraised value, but it seems to me the closer the property is to someone's house, that they should have a increased property value factor for their easement, because they're losing more since the property is closer to them. And in terms of the environment, as I mentioned earlier, that after Moon Valley, Getabout has more carefully done trails so that less trees are removed. So I'm hoping that although 85 trees were identified, once they get it laid out, the public will have a chance to weigh in, and it may be allowed to be more finely crafted. Also, I'm on the Collaborative Adaptive Management Stakeholder Group for the Hinkson, and have interacted with a lot of scientists, and so I've asked them about paved trails, and they have given me examples of how you can help mitigate where you do have problems with erosion or water control. So I hope that staff will look at those and bring, I won't be on council, but bring back to council some of the best practices. So each time we do a trail, we're doing it better for the property owners and better for the environment.
The danger of speaking last is all of the good ideas have already been said. There's not much that I need to add, but I do feel a need to explain my vote. It sounds like we have a council consensus to, at least at this stage, try to move forward, assuming that funds are available and that we can have a design that is acceptable. I would support the calls to try to minimize the impact on those property owners as best we can through the design of the trail. I think this route was selected because it does run through easements that the city already owns and controls, so that it already by the trail alignment is an attempt to limit that negative involvement on people who prefer not to have the trail on their property. Ms. Nauser's points were most salient, I think, to my own thoughts, is that these are funds for transportation modal shift, and so no difference through streets or sidewalks when we have to use eminent domain to be able to move forward with large infrastructure and transportation projects. Really the only time that it's really appropriate for government to use that most awesome of powers is so that we can facilitate those last pieces of the projects and that meet an overall community good. I think this project meets that standard because of the idea of modal shift, and I think that modal shift is the primary environmental impact that we're going to see. As we move people out of cars and into non-motorized transportation, we're going to have less negative environmental impacts, which is going to benefit wildlife. So for all those reasons, I'm supportive of this.
May I have a motion and a second directing staff to proceed with County House Trail Phase 2?
I'll make the motion to proceed with detailed design and to explore all possible ways to minimize the impact on private property in that final desigine.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Passes 6-0.